Internet! I'm Elliot the Purple-Haired Doofus, and welcome back to The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. Today we're discussing chapters 7 through 11. Chapter 7 begins with Rhea walking down the path and beginning to cry because of the predicament that she's in, and finding a wonderful, wonderful character who is completely voiceless and also happens to be a hedgehog. This hedgehog cannot talk, but answers questions through gestures and expressions that you wouldn't exactly find in a hedgehog. I have a feeling that this hedgehog is going to be my very favorite character in this book. She picks up the hedgehog and continues down the path, and then comes across something terrifying. It's a dead crow, and it's missing feathers, and you can see the scars from where it was opened up, and its eyes are replaced with stone. And when she comes across this crow, it turns its head, and it talks to her, and it says, "Be bold." Understandably, she completely freaks out at this weird-looking crow, and she follows the path a little bit farther, and she comes across another reanimated crow, very much in the same fashion, missing a lot more feathers so that she can see the underskin in the moonlight, with the same stones in its eyes. Only this one has a different message, and it alternates with the first one. So she hears the first one say, "Be bold." And then the second one turns its head and says, "But not too bold." And she doesn't know what to do, and it annoys her. And it annoys her so much that her fear is kind of pushed back, and all she can think about is how annoyed she is with this problem. And then she comes across a third crow, and it says, "Or your blood will run cold." And I'm reading this and a chill just kind of runs through my body. It's like, what the hell? She starts talking to the crows, and they just repeat the same phrases over and over again, until one of them just says, "You're entering the house of a murderer." She looks down to her hedgehog friend for questions and advice. It does one thing at the end of the chapter where it insinuates that turning back and trying to go back down the path will lead to certain death. So she continues to go forward. Now, I'll be honest with you, this book is kind of losing me when I read it, and I miss out on a lot of details. And I didn't mention a few details in the last video that I should have. Another important detail is the idea that Rhea is a peasant, and this guy who wants to marry her is a lord, and that's why society is just pushing her to marry this lord so that her family can live on and the mill can live on. But now that I cleared that up, let's go on to chapter 8. She gets to this house, and she thought it was going to be a hunting lodge, but it turns out to be a large mansion-like manor. And she walks up to the door, and she knocks on it, and this woman answers that has a scar across her neck. And Rhea just flashes her ring at the woman, and the woman just kind of nods slowly, and without saying a word, just like the hedgehog, just guides her into the house. Rhea fears that she's going to be taken directly to her fiancé, but she's actually taken to a bedroom where she can rest. And right before she goes to sleep, she stops the scarred woman and she says, "You know what? I'm really hungry. Can I have some food? It was a long journey here." And the scarred woman just kind of goes, "Ugh." the scarred woman guides her across the mansion again, and as she's guiding her across the main entrance of the mansion, she stops her. And the clock strikes midnight, and the floor, which is this white and black tiled floor, just falls away into this empty abyss. And Rhea is terrified of heights, looking down, and then the floor slowly reassembles itself with the tiles. And the scarred woman pushes her along across the floor. And Rhea is just kind of running, hoping that she gets across before the tiles fall again. Rhea gets to the kitchen where there's going to be food, and she meets two women there. One woman is a fat woman, and that's all the description that is given for her. And the other woman is completely blind and blindfolded. The fat woman stands up, grabs a bowl and a spoon, and says, "Oh, come on, sweetie, I'll cook something for you." The blind woman is just saying, "Is she prettier than me? She can't be prettier than me. Is she prettier than me? Please tell me she's not prettier than me." "Oh, she's not prettier than you. You are the prettiest in the land." The three talk a bit more, and they talk about a clock wife and a corpse wife. And you find out that all of these women that are in the house with Rhea right now are all wives of the man that wants to marry her. She eats her food and she finds out that all of these women are trapped in the manor and they can't escape. And they're all talking about the husband like he's an evil bastard. And none of them use his name. Rhea spends the morning when she wakes up realizing that she is the 7th bride to this husband, and that there is no way that she can possibly ask for help, because whoever comes down that path to help her can't go back down the path, because it leads to certain death. The fat woman's name is Maria, and she feels like Susanna, who I mentioned in the past video. She gives Rhea the task of doing dishes, and she gives her purpose in the house. And she says, "You know, we can tailor some clothes up for you so that you'll have something else to wear while you're here." And Rhea immediately dismisses that idea because she doesn't want to have the feeling of living here for very long. After Rhea's done doing the dishes, she decides to walk around the house and explore the different rooms. She finds 4 empty bedrooms, one with 2 beds, and she finds this dance hall that's just covered in dust. And in that dance hall, there's a whole bunch of other doors that she goes through. And she goes into this one room that has nothing but furniture covered in sheets. And some of the things are easy to identify and other things are not. But she's not brave enough to remove any of the sheets to find out what's underneath. While she's exploring the manor, though, she hears this tapping noise. And she retraces her steps and finds that the tapping noise leads her to the giant clock in the middle of the entrance. And she's wondering, is this the clock wife that they were talking about in the previous chapters? I mean, this guy didn't actually marry a clock, did he? And she sees the minute hand and the hour hand. And she's staring at it, and she's looking closer, and she finds this third hand. And she's looking closer and closer, thinking that it's the second hand. But it's not moving at all. In chapter 11, there's Maria, the fat woman, Sylvia, the blind woman, what was her name? The woman who was scarred across her neck, and Rhea, all sitting at the kitchen table. And Maria and Sylvia start talking about how they had their gifts taken from them when they married this man. And they're all talking about how this man is just an evil bastard. And it makes me very, very afraid for Rhea. Rhea's doing dishes when all of a sudden the house shakes. And she assumes that it's the floor being dropped out from the main entrance like it was when she was shown around the place. And she worries about becoming complacent to that. She asks Maria what that was. And Maria says, "Oh, sweetie, that's our husband. He's arrived. You'd better keep yourself busy, and he'll be wanting to see you soon." And so Rhea does keep herself busy, and eventually she gets called into the husband's study, and he's reading a book. He's smiling at her, being as personable as he can be, and he asks her if she's enjoying herself. "No, sir. No, I'm not. I would like to go home. Can I go home?" He finds this an insult, but he understands where she's coming from. So he gives her a task. He says, "There's a path through the forest. Leave at sundown. Go down the path. At the end of the path you will find a scarecrow and a pond. Take water from the pond and give it to the scarecrow. Return by sunup. If you fail to do this, you will have to marry me." And that's where chapter 11 ends. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to end in a cliffhanger like that, but that's where it ends. You will all have to come back tomorrow to see what happens next. The question for today's video is, it mentions in the chapters that the hedgehog can be seen as Rhea's familiar if she were magic. And I'm wondering, what animal would you choose to be your familiar? The answer from last video, which was, when was the last time that you went against society's wishes and just did your own thing? I'm not quite sure I can answer that for you yet. I can answer it for you. I do have an answer, but I'm not quite sure I want to give you that answer yet. An easy out for me would be to say, starting this YouTube channel was a way for me to rebel against everyone else's desire for me to do something. I have a degree in computer science, and I'm not using it right now. Instead, I'm doing this and other things. And most people would assume that I would just get some technician job, but I find it so incredibly boring. So let's just stick with that. Don't forget that the next book is Pest Control by Bill Fitzhugh. Go out and grab it by any legal means necessary, and read it before I spoil it for you. I have been the purple-haired doofus, reminding you to watch your pajama radius, and I will see you all in the next chapters of The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. Toodles!